She basically just bounced off the dinghy in the middle of a little blow, like 20-some knot wind.
Carly, the daughter, said that this man, her stepfather, didn't contact her for nearly 24 hours. And he did that ominous voice text, which Carly described as monotone and relaxed.
Yeah, voice text.
You're not monotone and relaxed if your spouse is missing.
Everyone who has followed this case has already decided. Brian Hooker is guilty. The moon line proves it. The anchor proves it. The phone proves it. The word bounced proves it. The fact that he flew to Atlanta while his wife's daughter searched foreign islands alone, that proves it too. You have your theory. It is probably right. But here is the thing about being right for the wrong reasons. Somewhere inside the 40-minute recording Brian made to a trusted friend, the call that was secretly captured, uploaded to the internet, and turned this case into a national story, there are two words that nobody is centering. Two words Brian delivered calmly, without hesitation, as though they explained nothing at all. They explain everything. And once you hear them the way investigators hear them, the moon line stops being the most damaging thing on that tape. Brian Hooker becomes the most damaging thing on that tape. Before the two words, you need the water. Because the story Brian has been telling, the one the whole world has been arguing about, only works if the water cooperates. And the water, it turns out, has opinions of its own. The channel between Elbow Cay and Lubber's Quarters is not the Atlantic Ocean. It is not even close. A local charter captain who has spent 15 years working those exact cays described it in terms that should have stopped this case cold the moment Lynette didn't surface. The bottom is visible from the deck of a moving boat. At low tide, parts of that channel sit at 4 feet of depth. Even at high tide, it climbs to roughly 10. That same captain told reporters he has personally spotted stingrays and sea turtles through that water while underway. Not anchored. Moving. He said something else that landed harder than any of the legal analysis this case has generated. He said that in water like that, in a channel that tight, with land visible in every direction the entire crossing, a person who goes overboard and doesn't survive should be found the next morning. Not in 3 weeks, the next morning. Because the boats are constant, the water is clear, and somebody always sees something strange and says so. 18 days of aerial drones, submersible drones, shoreline sweeps, sea patrols, and cadaver dogs have produced nothing. Not a trace. In water, where a charter captain says he would see a body from the deck of his moving boat. Hold that. We are going to need it. Now to the recording. 3 days after Lynette vanished, Brian placed a call to a couple he and Lynette had known for more than 2 years. They had anchored near each other, shared dinners, sailed the same waters, and built the kind of friendship that forms inside the cruising community tight, specific, earned over time and tides. Brian trusted this man. That trust is why the call happened. It is also why the call exists, because the man on the other end pressed record without Brian knowing, and then uploaded the entire exchange after Brian's arrest. The decision to upload has been debated endlessly. What has been debated less is what it took to sit through 40 minutes of that recording and notice what Brian actually said versus what Brian wanted his friend to hear. The night of April 4th, Brian walked his friend through the day's events the way one experienced sailor talks to another. Landmarks, tides, distances, measured in yards, wind speed in miles per hour, wave height in feet, the sequence in which each piece of equipment failed.
The wind blew us apart so fast that I think she tried to swim back to the sailboat, back to our sailboat, which was probably, I don't know, 1,000 yards or something. Dinghy key over with her because it wasn't clipped to anything or anybody, and she had the spare dinghy key in her dry bag, which was with her. Yeah, it was inflated, and I was yelling for her the whole time, and I yelled to her that I lost an oar, and I threw the anchor out and anchored the dinghy, and I yelled.
He was not a man falling apart on a phone call. He was a man constructing a walkthrough. Specific, measured, deliberate. They had spent the day out on the water, a stop at a sandbar with drinks, then dinner at a small restaurant near Hopetown on Great Abaco Island. The return trip to their sailboat A 4-6-foot vessel anchored nearby was supposed to be routine, a short dinghy ride. Brian estimated the window from departure to disaster at roughly half a mile. He put the wind at 20 miles per hour, the seas at 3 feet. The sun, by his count, was about 10 minutes from the horizon when they pushed off. A local charter captain, who later retraced that exact route for a national outlet, estimated the full crossing in normal conditions takes 4 minutes. Lynette went into the water, somewhere inside those 4 minutes. What followed, according to Brian, was a cascade. His word, a cascade of failures, one on top of another, each one making the next one worse. The dinghy's engine cut out. A pin snapped on one of the oars, and the oar went overboard with it. The 2 dinghy keys, the only way to restart the engine, were both unavailable. One had gone into the water with Lynette. The other was in a dry bag she was carrying when she went over. The wind was already pulling the dinghy away from her position faster than he could manage with one oar in wind that was climbing. He yelled. He said he told her he had lost the oar. He said he threw a flotation cushion toward her but couldn't confirm she reached it. The Hopetown search and rescue team later confirmed they recovered that cushion from the water. Lynette did not have it when she went in. She did not have a personal flotation device on her body either. That detail came not only from Brian's own account, but from the rescue team lead who spoke to media before the recording ever surfaced. 2 flotation devices on that dinghy. 0 on Lynette Hooker when the wind took her. Brian said he believed she was trying to swim back to their sailboat, which he estimated was roughly 1,000 yards from where she went over. 1,000 yards. In 3-foot seas. In 20-mile-per-hour wind. Dressed for dinner. He said he lost sight of her. And here is where we slow down. Because the reason he gave for losing sight of her is not the waves. It is not the distance. It is not the spray or the failing light of a long day. He told his friend he could no longer see her because the moon had not risen yet. Remember that sentence. We are coming back to it. Brian said he threw the anchor out and held position, yelling into the wind for close to an hour. No answer came back. By the time the anchor caught, his own estimate put him 1/4 to half a mile from where she had entered the water. He made the decision to paddle toward land and go for help. What followed was 7 hours of paddling, his own number. 7 hours, in the dark, in 20-mile-per-hour wind, in a small dinghy with 1 oar, 4 miles to a strip of marshland near the boatyards. He said he passed boats during that stretch. He said he fired flares at 2 of them. Neither one responded. He waved his phone flashlight at a third. That one kept moving too. His phone, he explained, was only capable of making calls over a Wi-Fi connection. There was no Wi-Fi on open water. That is the only explanation Brian Hooker has ever offered publicly for why no emergency call went out while his wife was in the water. A telecommunications expert assessed that claim for a national outlet and described cell coverage in that channel as spotty but present, not a dead zone. Spotty, which is a different thing entirely from nothing. And the more important point about that phone has nothing to do with Brian's memory of it. Every tower it pinged, every network it reached for, every connection it attempted or dropped, that record exists on a carrier server regardless of what Brian remembers doing with the screen. Investigators with the right paperwork can pull it. They may already have. Now we go back to the moon. Brian told his friend he lost sight of Lynette because the moon had not risen yet. Lynette went into the water at approximately 7:30 inches the evening. Brian's own account puts the sunset roughly 10 minutes after that. What follows a sunset in the Bahamas in early April is not sudden darkness. There is a period sailors and pilots have a name for it, civil twilight, that runs for roughly 20 to 25 minutes after the sun drops below the horizon. During civil twilight, the western sky is still carrying enough light that on land, artificial lighting is not yet required. At 7:40 on the evening of April 4th, while Brian was by his own account 1/4 to half a mile from where his wife entered the water, the sky above that channel was still holding light. A moonless midnight does not arrive 10 minutes after a 7:30 sunset. A former Marine who has spent more than 12 years on the water knows the difference between civil twilight and a moonless night. That is the first place where what Brian said on the recording stops matching what the world outside it can confirm. There are others. A boater who had been friends with Brian for more than 2 decades went on a national broadcast after hearing the account and said plainly that the story did not add up. He raised one question that has not been answered. If Brian believed his wife was swimming toward their sailboat, if that was the thing he told his friend he believed she was attempting, why did he paddle 4 miles in the opposite direction instead of going to the sailboat, first to check whether she had made it? That question did not come from a critic. It came from a friend of over 20 years who knew Brian and Lynette as experienced, capable people on the water, people who knew what they were doing. Which brings us to the anchor. Brian told his friend on that recording that he threw the anchor out last. He said he could not explain why. He said he knew it was wrong, and he did it anyway. When someone goes overboard from a small craft in wind and current, the anchor is the one thing that keeps you close to them. It stops the drift. It holds position. Throwing it last, after the engine is gone, after the oar is gone, after. The current has already carried the dinghy 1,000 yards. From the person who needs you means the anchor holds you. Where the current took you, not where she is, where you ended up. Brian said that himself, in his own words, on a recording he did not know existed. A former Marine, 12 years on the water, and the anchor went in last. Now the 2 words. They are not the moon line. They are not the anchor sequence. They are not the phone explanation. Brian said them once, in a single breath, in the middle of his own accounting of everything that went wrong that night. No life jackets. That is what he told his friend. Neither he nor Lynette had been wearing a personal flotation device when she went into that water. Sit with who these 2 people were before you move past that sentence. Brian has described their life on the water to multiple national outlets. 12 years sailing together. 4 years living full-time aboard their sailboat. A partnership he called closer to co-captains than passenger and pilot because the boat was large enough that it genuinely took both of them working in their specific roles to run her right. A former Marine at the helm. A nighttime dinghy crossing. 20 miles per hour of wind. 3-foot seas. A sun about to disappear. Water shallow enough to see the bottom. And the most fundamental rule any person learns in the first week of being on the water was the first rule broken before they pushed off. Not by accident, not by forgetting, by choice. That is what the U.S. Coast Guard's criminal investigation will sit with when everything else has been argued through. Not the moon, not the phone, not the anchor. The life jackets. Because there is no version of the story Brian has told about who he and Lynette were 12 years, co-captains, experienced. Careful, that explains why neither of them was wearing one on that ride. And Brian, in 40 minutes of careful, specific, deliberate accounting of everything that went wrong, offered no explanation for it either. He named it. He moved past it. He kept talking. Where this case stands now, Lynette's daughter Carly has flown to the islands with her partner to run her own search alongside the authorities. She told a national outlet she doubted Brian's account from the beginning. The questions, she said, kept pointing back to the same person. Her partner said something quieter that has stayed with people who heard it. He said neither of them would argue that Brian didn't deserve to be at his critically ill mother's bedside. They were just noting that Carly never got that option. She never got the option to be at her mother's side before she was gone. The U.S. Coast Guard's criminal investigation remains open. Brian has not been charged. He denies any wrongdoing. Blaine Stevenson, the man who made the recording and uploaded it, told a national outlet his reason plainly. He did not want Lynette to be found days later and have it identified that she had been alive in that water but hadn't survived because no one was looking in the right place. That was his stated reason, not views. Not clout, a friend who no longer believed the account he had been given and thought the people searching deserved every detail in Brian's own voice. By the time the Stevensons appeared on television days later, Marn Stevenson, who had been one of Lynette's closest confidants in the months before her disappearance, used one word to describe Brian's decision to leave the Bahamas: disgusting. These were his friends. 2 years of dinners and anchorages and shared water, and by the 3rd week, they were on national television saying he needed to step up. The moon line is what people are arguing about. The anchor is what people are analyzing. The phone is what investigators are pulling records on. But the 2 words Brian said once and moved past the 2 words that no amount of wind speed or equipment failure or moonrise timing can touch, those are the ones that won't let go. 12 years on the water, no life jackets. You already had your theory before this video started. The question worth sitting with now is whether the evidence you were most certain about was actually the evidence that mattered most. Drop your answer in the comments and be specific. If you think the life jacket detail changes this case more than the moon line does, tell me exactly why. Subscribe and turn on notifications so the next development reaches you the moment it breaks. Lynette Hooker's daughter is still on those islands. This is not over.